You know that specific smell when someone's about to make the biggest mistake of their professional life? It's like cheap perfume mixed with overconfidence and desperation. That's what hit me the moment I walked into the conference room on the 44th floor and saw the balloons. I'm Michael Stevens, 48 years old, and I've been building industrial systems for 25 years. The kind of systems that keep power grids running and factories from exploding. Not exactly glamorous work, but it pays well, and I sleep fine at night knowing I actually understand what I'm building. But this Tuesday morning, our usual engineering meeting had been transformed into what looked like a gender reveal party designed by someone who'd never seen actual work being done. Purple and gold balloons were tied to every chair, and there was a banner that said, "Innovation Transformation," in letters that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Standing on a makeshift stage was Jessica Walsh, our CEO's 28-year-old daughter-in-law. She had an MBA from one of those schools that advertise during daytime TV, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes because the Botox had created a defensive perimeter around her face. Jessica clapped her manicured hands together. "Michael, perfect timing. You're just in time for the big pivot announcement." I walked over with my beat-up coffee mug, the same stainless steel thing that had survived 3 company mergers and countless late nights debugging systems that actually mattered. Around me, my engineering team looked like hostages in a bank robbery, where the robbers were forcing them to listen to a presentation about synergy. "The pivot, Jessica?" I asked. "We're 3 weeks away from the Titan infrastructure launch. The system's 90% integrated across 12 manufacturing plants. You can't pivot a freight train in a phone booth." She laughed, and it sounded like ice cubes hitting the bottom of an empty glass. "Oh, Michael, you're so analog. We're not building a freight train anymore. We're building a movement." She gestured to the screen behind her. My architectural diagrams, 3 years of careful engineering work, thousands of hours of load calculations and fail-safe protocols that were currently keeping $200 million worth of industrial equipment running smoothly, were gone. In their place was a slide that just said, "Disruptive Innovation 2.0" in a font that looked like it was designed by a kindergartner with a glitter obsession. "I've been appointed as Chief Innovation Officer," Jessica announced, beaming at the room full of engineers who actually knew what they were doing. The applause was scattered and terrified, and my first initiative is to democratize leadership. "Michael, you've done steady work, but we need fresh perspectives. Digital natives." She pointed to a young woman standing next to the artificial plant. "Ashley Porter here will be taking over as lead systems engineer for the final rollout." Ashley Porter was 22 years old, had a marketing degree, and once asked me if TCP/IP was some kind of internet vitamin. She was currently wearing designer sneakers that cost more than most people's monthly car payments and had never seen the inside of an actual factory. The silence that followed had weight. It had mass. Stephen Clark, my lead engineer, looked at me with eyes that silently begged me to throw a chair, or at least say something that would make this nightmare stop. But I didn't throw anything. I'm a systems engineer. I don't deal in chaos. I deal in logic gates and load calculations. And the logic here was flawed, but the contract was absolute. "Ashley," I said, keeping my voice calm, "do you know what the thermal expansion coefficient is for the primary cooling loops in Building 7? Ashley blinked twice. "We're going to move everything to the cloud, right?" "Right," I said. "The cloud." I looked at Jessica, who was glowing with the confidence of someone who had never actually built anything that mattered. She thought she was cleaning house. She thought she was winning. She had no idea she was pulling the pin on a grenade and tucking it into her designer handbag. "So, Michael," Jessica said, clasping her hands together like she was about to lead a prayer circle, "I know this is a transition. We'll keep you on for 2 weeks to transfer knowledge. You can use the cubicle near the copy machine. It'll be quieter for documentation work." The disrespect was complete. I set my coffee mug down on the conference table. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my access badge, the heavy magnetic card that gave me entry to the server rooms, the manufacturing control centers, and the executive elevator. "No need," I said simply. Jessica tilted her head like a golden retriever confused by a magic trick. "Excuse me?" "I don't need 2 weeks," I said, sliding the badge across the table. It spun once and stopped right at the edge, teetering. "I resign. Effective immediately." "You can't just quit," Jessica scoffed. "We have the board meeting at 5 p.m. The investors are flying in to see the demo. Christopher specifically said you needed to be there to answer technical questions." Ashley is the lead systems engineer now, I said, smoothing down my jacket. She's a digital native. I'm sure she can explain the cloud infrastructure. Michael, stop being dramatic, Jessica snapped, her smile finally cracking. You're staying. That's an order. I looked at her. I looked at the balloons. I looked at the fear in my team's eyes. I'm not an employee anymore, Jessica. I'm a civilian, and civilians don't take orders from innovation officers. I turned around and headed for the glass doors. I could feel their eyes on my back, like heat lamps. Oh, I paused at the doors. Please tell your father-in-law that the 5 p.m. board meeting should be very interesting. What does that mean? She demanded. I didn't answer. I just walked out with the steady, measured pace of a man who knows exactly when the bomb is set to go off and has just enough time to get to a safe distance and pour a decent bourbon. As the elevator closed, I checked my watch. 9:15 a.m. The Titan protocol had a heartbeat, and I had just stopped the pacemaker. Now we just had to wait for the patient to realize it was dead. There's a specific kind of quiet in Northern Virginia suburbs at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. It's the sound of leaf blowers taking lunch breaks and delivery trucks idling at stop signs. Perfect contrast to the digital inferno I could predict was currently raging 20 miles away in our corporate tower. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the hum of my truck's engine and the settling of my nervous system. When I pulled into my driveway, I didn't go inside immediately. I stood by my workshop in the garage, running my hand over the workbench I'd built from scratch. Solid oak, dovetailed joints, the kind of craftsmanship that lasts generations. The kind they don't teach marketing majors. My phone, which I'd left on the passenger seat, was lighting up like a Christmas tree. I didn't need to look to know what was happening. I could visualize the sequence of events in my mind like a flowchart I'd debugged 1,000 times. First, the panic would start with the engineering team. Stephen, along with the others, would be huddled in the break room realizing that the Titan system wasn't just code on a server. It was a living ecosystem that required specific biometric authorization for any changes. My authorization. By 10:30 a.m., Ashley would try to log into the master control console to change something cosmetic for her presentation. She'd be met with a grayed-out screen and error messages she couldn't pronounce, let alone understand. By 11 a.m., Jessica would be getting irritated. She'd be pacing around her new corner office, demanding to know why the dashboard isn't popping. She'd tell Ashley to just call Michael, and that's when the real terror would start creeping in. I walked into my kitchen and made myself a sandwich. Turkey, Swiss, heavy on the mustard. I sat at my granite counter and finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and a wall of text messages that looked like the final transmissions from a sinking ship. From Stephen Clark, lead engineer. Michael, please pick up. Ashley is trying to modify the root directory. I can't stop her. She has admin privileges but no system clearance. It's triggering the lockout protocols. From Jessica. Michael, this is unprofessional. Pick up your phone. Need system access for demo environment now. From Jessica. 10 minutes later. I'm writing you up for insubordination and breach of contract. I chuckled. Writing up a non-employee for insubordination was exactly the kind of logic I expected from someone who thought you could store heavy machinery in the cloud. I opened my laptop, my personal MacBook, not the company brick I'd left on my desk, and logged into my private email server. I checked the sent folder. There it was, the resignation email, but it wasn't sent to HR or Jessica. It was sent to a secure escrow service that time-stamped it and forwarded copies to the board of directors, legal counsel, the external auditors, and Christopher's executive assistant. Timestamp, 6:59 a.m., 2 hours before Jessica's little coronation ceremony, 2 hours before she reassigned me. Why did this matter? Because in Virginia, and specifically within the ironclad clauses of the contract I wrote, yes, I wrote the technical scope agreement, not the lawyers, the timing of departure determined custody of intellectual property. If I had quit after she reassigned the project, it could be argued I was abandoning my post. But I resigned while I was still the sole authorized engineer. I resigned before there was any insubordination to claim. I took a bite of my sandwich and imagined HR frantically searching their inboxes. We don't have a resignation letter, the HR director would be saying, wiping sweat from her forehead. Technically, he just walked out. Is that job abandonment? They were focusing on the wrong thing. They were worried about employment law when they should have been worried about intellectual property law. The phone rang again. It was the main office line. I let it ring. Then a text from Ashley. "Hey Michael, hope you're good. Quick cue. What's the login for the thermal management node? It's asking for some 64-character key thing. TSX. I whispered to my empty kitchen. The thermal management node. Ashley didn't even know what thermal management was, let alone why it needed a 64-character encryption key to prevent industrial equipment from overheating and potentially exploding. I didn't reply. I wasn't being petty. Well, maybe 5% petty, but mostly this was strategic. Any response from me could be construed as consulting work. If I helped them even once, even with a single password, I would reestablish an employment relationship. I would validate their disaster. Silence was my shield. Silence was my weapon. I washed my plate, dried it, and put it away. It was 1 p.m., 4 hours until the board meeting. 4 hours until Christopher landed from his golf trip in Florida. 4 hours until the $200 million question got asked, and the answer was a 404 error. I went to my living room and opened a book, a mystery novel. It felt appropriate. Except in my version, the murder weapon was a clause on page 7 of Addendum B, and the victim was a manufacturing control system. Back at the glass tower, the air conditioning was set to 68 degrees, but Anthony Rogers, our chief technology officer, was sweating through his Italian suit. Anthony was a man who had failed upward with the aerodynamic efficiency of a helium balloon. He knew buzzwords and expensive scotch, but he couldn't debug a coffee machine, let alone a distributed industrial control system. I wasn't there, but I could predict exactly what was happening. I'd worked with these people for 3 years. I knew their panic responses like I knew my own social security number. Anthony would be standing behind Ashley's chair, watching cascading red error messages fill her screen. Just bypass the authentication, he'd be barking. "We have the admin keys. Use the admin keys." I tried. Ashley's voice would be cracking by now. It says invalid engineering authorization. It says the system is in orphan mode. Orphan mode? Jessica would snap, pacing the room with her phone in one hand, probably texting her husband Andrew to complain that I was being difficult. "What the hell is orphan mode? Is that a bug?" "It's not a bug," Stephen would finally say. Stephen was a good man with a mortgage and twins in college. He didn't have the luxury of burning bridges. It's a feature. Michael built it in year 1. It prevents unauthorized takeovers. A hostile takeover? Jessica would laugh, but it would sound dry and brittle. I didn't attack the server. I just promoted fresh talent. It's a staffing change, not a cyber attack. The system doesn't know the difference, Stephen would say quietly. A reassignment without the primary engineer's private key looks exactly like someone trying to hijack the core infrastructure. "Well, override it," Jessica would scream. "You're the CTO, Anthony. Override him." This was the part I treasured most, the moment where titles met reality. Anthony had the title, the salary, the corner office, but in the world of industrial systems engineering, authority isn't granted by HR departments. It's granted by encryption keys and 25 years of actually knowing what you're doing. I can't, Anthony would admit, his voice small. He never transferred root access. We assumed because he was quiet that he was just maintaining legacy code. He locked us out. He sabotaged the company. Jessica's eyes would go wide. "No," Stephen would correct her, and I loved him for this even though I'd never hear him say it. "He didn't sabotage anything. The system is protecting itself. It's doing exactly what he programmed it to do. It's waiting for the engineer." "Call him again," Jessica would shriek. I did. Straight to voicemail. "Send a courier to his house." "He lives in a gated community," Stephen would lie. I didn't, but Stephen knew I hated unannounced visitors. At 2:30 p.m., the first cracks in the facade appeared outside the engineering department. The marketing team couldn't update the customer portal. The sales team couldn't access the CRM. The internal communications started to lag. The Titan protocol wasn't just the new project. It was the nervous system of the entire operation, and I had severed the spinal cord. Jessica stormed out of the server room. "I'm calling Christopher. My father-in-law will fix this. He'll sue him into the ground." She dialed Christopher, the CEO, who was currently at 30,000 feet flying back on the corporate jet for the big meeting. I could imagine the conversation was brief. "Christopher, Michael locked us out of the system. He's holding us hostage. And Christopher, who despite his family loyalty actually understood profit margins, would ask one simple question. Did you fire him? I repositioned his role to optimize efficiency. Did you fire him? He walked out. He quit. When? This morning, right before the meeting. Christopher would go silent. He knew I didn't do drama. If I walked out, the building was already on fire. Fix it, Christopher would say, his voice cold. If those screens are blank when the investors walk in at 5, being family won't save you. Back in the server room, Ashley was staring at her screen. The red text had changed. It was no longer scrolling error messages. It was a single static prompt. System lockdown imminent. Enter primary engineer credentials or system will revert to base state in 120 minutes. What's base state? Ashley whispered. Stephen looked up, his face pale. Factory settings, empty. It wipes everything and starts over. No, Stephen said. It encrypts everything and throws away the key. The clock on the wall ticked. 2:45 p.m. I turned the page of my book. The detective had just found the murder weapon. How appropriate. The legal department was on the 12th floor, and it smelled like mahogany furniture and desperation. At 4 p.m., 1 hour before the board meeting, the head of legal, a shark named Matthew Davis, who wore suspenders without irony, was screaming at 3 junior associates. Find the breach of contract, Matthew roared. He's an at-will employee. He has a fiduciary duty. If he maliciously damaged company assets, we can have the sheriff drag him in here. They were tearing through my personnel file, reading my NDAs, looking for the standard text that says everything you create belongs to us. But they were looking at the employment contract. They weren't looking at the Titan Project IP agreement. See, 3 years ago, when the company was bleeding cash and their old system crashed for 72 hours straight, they begged me to fix it. I was a consultant then. I wasn't desperate. They were. So I wrote the terms. When they hired me full-time later, they were so relieved to have stability, they just attached my original consultancy agreement as an addendum to my employment contract. They didn't read it. They just signed it. Found it, a junior lawyer shouted, holding up a document. Addendum B, the Titan Development Framework. Read it, Matthew snapped. Clause 11.7, subsection C, the junior lawyer read, his voice wavering. In the event of project reassignment, demotion, or termination of the primary engineer without a 60-day transitional period and written technical sign-off, get to the point. All integrated systems will automatically execute a protective lockdown protocol. The room went silent. Protective lockdown, Matthew whispered. What does that mean? It gets worse. Subsection D. This protocol is designed to prevent intellectual property theft by unauthorized parties. The system will revert to independent contractor mode until the primary engineer provides biometric verification. He licensed it to us, Matthew realized, sinking into his leather chair. He didn't sell it. He built it as a licensed tool, and the license depends on his supervision. Wait, Jessica said, barging into the legal office with mascara slightly smudged. So we just hire him back, offer him a raise, double his salary, get him on the phone and tell him he can have the corner office. Matthew looked at Jessica with pure contempt. It's not about money. Look at the timestamp on the lockout. They looked at the screen. The system had begun its lockdown sequence at 9 a.m. He triggered this the second you made your announcement, Matthew said. He didn't do it from a keyboard. It was an automated dead man's switch. If his badge didn't scan the server room by noon, the system assumed he was gone. So hack it, Jessica screamed. We can't, Matthew said. It's encrypted with military-grade protocols that rotate every 60 seconds. And legally, if we try to break the encryption, we're violating federal computer crime statutes. He could sue us for triple damages. We're talking federal prosecutors. We're talking SEC investigations into why we're using unlicensed software to run our manufacturing operations. 4:45 p.m. In the boardroom on the 50th floor, caterers were arranging expensive sandwiches on silver platters. The massive screens at the front of the room were displaying a pulsing red logo. Not the company logo, but a lock icon with small, polite text underneath. Contact administrator. License suspended. Ashley was in the boardroom, frantically trying to connect her laptop to the presentation system, hoping that maybe if she ignored the server meltdown and just showed a PowerPoint, nobody would notice that the live demonstration was completely dead. It's just a glitch, Ashley was muttering to the empty chairs. I'll just explain the vision. The elevator dinged. The investors were here. Sharks in expensive suits who looked at quarterly reports like restaurant menus. deciding what looked appetizing and what should be thrown back. "Where's Christopher?" the lead investor, Paul Henderson, asked. "He's landing," Jessica said, stepping forward with a smile that looked like a grimace of pain. "Welcome. I'm Jessica, the new Chief Innovation Officer. We have such an exciting disruption to show you." Paul Henderson looked at the red screen. He looked at Jessica. He looked at Ashley, who was visibly vibrating with nervous energy. "Why does the screen say license suspended?" Henderson asked. "Oh, that," Jessica laughed. "Technical hiccup. Software update. You know how technology is." "I do know how technology is," Henderson said dryly. "And usually that means someone didn't pay the bill." "We paid," Jessica insisted. "We own it." "Actually," a voice came from the doorway. It was Matthew, the lawyer. He looked defeated. "We need to reschedule. We have a compliance issue regarding the architecture." "Where's Michael?" Henderson asked. "He knew my name. I'd briefed him 6 months ago about the Titan rollout. He liked me because I didn't use buzzwords and I actually understood loads. Calculations. Michael is no longer with the organization," Jessica said quickly. Henderson's eyes narrowed. He looked at the lock screen. He connected the dots instantly. "You fired the engineer," Henderson said, "and he took the keys." "He can't do that," Jessica insisted. "If he's smart," Henderson said, sitting down and crossing his legs, "he already did. And if he's the one who built this system, I'm betting he's very smart." He looked at his watch. "I'll wait for Christopher. This should be entertaining." The boardroom doors flew open with enough force to rattle the windows. Christopher Walsh strode in wearing a golf shirt and a look that could strip paint. He'd clearly run from the tarmac to his car to the elevator. "What?" Christopher hissed. "Is happening?" The room fell silent. The investors were watching with the detached amusement of Romans at the Colosseum. Jessica was standing near the whiteboard, looking small. Ashley was practically trying to merge with the wall. "Christopher," Jessica started, her voice shrill. "It's sabotage. Michael planted a virus. He locked us out right before the demo to humiliate us." Christopher didn't look at her. He stared at the red screen. "License suspended." He turned to Matthew. "Is it true? Did he sabotage us?" Matthew cleared his throat and held up a file folder. "Technically, sir, no. The system reverted to its default legal state. Michael's consulting firm owns the core architecture. We had a license to use it as long as he was the supervising engineer. When his employment terminated without a transition agreement, the license expired automatically." "But he quit," Jessica yelled. "He walked out on us." "Actually," Matthew said, opening the folder, "my team found this. It was delivered to my inbox via secured escrow at 6:59 this morning." He placed a single sheet of paper on the mahogany table, his resignation letter, dated and time-stamped 2 hours before you announced the reorganization. Christopher picked up the paper. His hands were shaking slightly. "He didn't walk out," Christopher whispered, reading the text. "He resigned because he knew. He knew you were going to replace him." "I didn't tell him," Jessica protested. "It was a surprise announcement." "Michael doesn't like surprises," Christopher said. "Michael hears everything." He looked at the timestamp, then at his daughter-in-law. "You tried to outmaneuver him. You tried to take a 3-year project worth $200 million to this company and hand it to—" He gestured at Ashley. "To a marketing major who's never seen the inside of a factory." "I was disrupting the paradigm," Jessica cried. "You disrupted our liquidity," Christopher roared, slamming his hand on the table. The water glasses jumped. Paul Henderson cleared his throat. "Christopher, am I to understand that the proprietary technology we're investing in isn't actually owned by this company?" Christopher turned to the investors. The color drained from his face. "It's a complex IP structure. We can resolve it. We just need to get Michael back." "To the table." "And where is he?" Henderson asked. "He's unavailable," Christopher said. "He's probably at home," Jessica sneered, laughing at us. "No," Henderson said, looking at his phone. He held it up. "He's not at home." On Henderson's screen was a LinkedIn notification, a press release. "Quantum Solutions welcomes new Chief Systems Engineer." There was a photo of me in a professional headshot, looking calm and competent. "Quantum?" Christopher choked out. "Our biggest competitor?" "Read the headline," Henderson said. Christopher leaned in. "Quantum Solutions secures exclusive licensing rights to next-generation Atlas infrastructure, formerly known as Titan, developed by Michael Stevens." The room went dead silent except for the hum of the projector still displaying the red lock icon. "He sold it," Matthew whispered. He resigned, the license reverted to him, and he sold it to Quantum. He's been planning this for 3 weeks, Christopher said, collapsing into a chair. Ever since the rumors started about Jessica's promotion. He knew this was coming. He had the deal ready. He looked at Jessica with disgust. You didn't just lose us the project. You handed our entire infrastructure to our biggest competitor. You armed the enemy. Jessica started crying. But family. Get out, Christopher said. Now, Dad, get out. Jessica ran from the room. Ashley followed, clutching her laptop like a shield. Christopher looked at the investors. Gentlemen, I assume the investment is off the table. Henderson stood up and buttoned his jacket. Christopher, the investment is definitely off the table. We invest in stability. And frankly, we're going to call Quantum. Sounds like they have one hell of a system coming online. They walked out, leaving Christopher alone in the boardroom with Matthew and the red screen. License suspended. 20 miles away, I closed my book. The detective had solved the case. It was the incompetent middle manager. She'd killed the company but made it look like an accident. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office at Quantum Solutions. Real hardwood desk, a window with an actual view of something other than a parking garage, and a computer that booted up without any red screens or license warnings. Jennifer Park, Quantum's CEO, knocked on my door frame. Michael, how does it feel to be the most popular engineer in Virginia? We've signed 8 new contracts since the announcement, she said, grinning. Companies are calling us saying their current systems are unreliable and they need better solutions. What happened to my old company? Still trying to rebuild from backups, Jennifer said. But without the architectural framework, it's like trying to assemble a watch when all you have are loose gears. They'll be operational again in maybe 8 months. By then, we'll own the market. And Jessica? Terminated the day after the board meeting. Her husband Andrew filed for divorce last week. Word is he's furious about losing his inheritance. A month later, I was buying groceries when I ran into Stephen Clark. He looked better, no stress lines around his eyes. Michael, he said, I quit the day after you left. Quantum made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Jennifer mentioned she needed a good lead engineer. It's like a morgue over there now, Stephen said. They tried a brute force attack on the servers, triggered the final failsafe, total data wipe. They're running accounting off Excel spreadsheets. When I got home that evening, there was one voicemail from an unknown number. The voice was slurred. Whine. Definitely whine. Michael, it's Jessica. I know we had our differences, but you have to help me. Christopher cut me off. Andrew left me. Everyone's laughing at me. They turned my presentation into a meme. Please just give me some access codes. I'll tell them I figured it out. Please. The message ended with a sob. I stared at the phone for a long moment. I remembered the balloons. I remembered being assigned to the cubicle by the copy machine. I remembered 25 years of expertise being dismissed as analog thinking. I saved the message next to the time-stamped resignation letter, then blocked the number. I poured myself a bourbon, the good stuff, and sat on my back deck. The sun was setting over Virginia, painting the sky purple and gold. Funny how those colors look so much better in nature. My phone buzzed with a project notification from Quantum. Project Phoenix, Lead Systems Engineer, M. Stevens. I accepted the assignment and raised my glass to the sunset. Sometimes the system works exactly as designed.
I was promised photos of your feet 3,000 years ago. I missed that troll. I shouldn't have banned him. I should have let him stay. That was mean of me. Alright, friends. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so we have... cast of characters. Oh lord. Okay. This is our sim. This is our main sim. She's a bit of a disaster. Oh, you're making biryani? Oh, that sounds yummy. I think what we're focusing on the most right now... Oh, nectar making is maxed. What do we have to do? Are we almost done? Marry me. Okay. Giant eggplants. We did that. We put it on the shelf. Hi, Newtwo. Zeke is a crotch kicker. Truth. Yep, she is. Don't even say wow. Don't say wow to that, Zeke. You were kicking my crotch constantly. Don't even try and defend yourself. So rude. Truth. Share the recipe, please. Okay. Max the romance. Done. Fitness. Oh.
No,
Let's do fitness skill. What's a union? I did nothing, no proof. There's clips. There's clips. Zeke, don't even try.